Hi. So, chapter 7 is going to talk about structuring an organization. How do we put it together? How does it function? And we're looking at 6 learning objectives. Outline the basic principles of organizational management. Compare the organizational theories of Fayol and Weber. Evaluate the choices managers make in structuring organizations. Contrast the various organizational models. Identify the benefits of inter-firm cooperation and coordination, and explain how organizational culture can help businesses adapt to change. So in organizing a business, it's going to happen for all businesses, large and small. Structuring the business, making an appropriate division of labor, so who's going to do what and how does it get done. Job specialization, departmentalization, if you're going to use that. Establishing procedures and a culture. How do we function together? How do we work together? And assigning authority. Those are all tasks that are found in most businesses. But how do they operate at your business, the one you're working at now? So we're looking here, there's a chart of changes over the last couple of decades. Mobile phone use, 34% in 2000, 95% in 2020. So by 2020, so actually by today, almost everybody's got a cell phone. But think about how much of it gets used for phone calls and how much for text messages or emails. And that comes down to this. Emails sent, 2,000 daily emails, 12 billion emails in 2000. Today, daily emails sent 265 billion, more than 20 times the number. Daily newspapers down from 1480 in 2000 to 1186 in 2020. Why? Because people are getting their information from the internet for varieties of sources on the internet. Amount of books published, 282,000 in 2000, 1,680,000. Now, even though we're not reading newspapers anymore, we are reading books. iTunes downloads. Obviously, in 2000, that was before the iPod. Come the iPod, it was 10 billion, and now in 2020, 300 billion. So we're changing in the way we get our information and the way we get our entertainment. The development of organizational design. So mass production of goods led to complexities in organizing businesses. So the departmental type of a business grew out of the larger and larger organization that needed to be organized and needed to have some sort of process for movement of data through the organization. Economies of scale. A perfect example of economies of scale is Costco, right? We pay a lower price at Costco, but you have to buy toilet paper by the pallet, not by the 6-roll package. Henry Fayol introduced several management principles still followed today, including the idea that each worker should report to only one manager, and that managers in turn should have the right to give orders for others to follow and the power to enforce, having the authority as well as the responsibility. Here are some of Fayol's principles of organization, and we'll recognize a lot of them. Unity of command. Fayol wrote that an employee should receive orders from one supervisor only. It's easier for workers to only have to report to one person and take orders from one person. Otherwise, authority, discipline, order, and stability are threatened. Hierarchy of authority. Fayol suggested the now familiar org chart, right? Top down. Executives, middle management, workers. Division of labor. Something that we got from Henry Ford as well. Assign each employee a task that they can become proficient at. Individuals should pursue team interests over personal ones. Something that Henry Ford didn't anticipate, though, was, yes, one person doing the same thing over and over again becomes very proficient, but over time, if they're not given new responsibilities, they get bored and that efficiency starts to drop. Order. Fayol wrote that the right man in the right place forms an effective social order. And finally, esprit de corps. That's something that we relate to the Marine Corps, esprit de corps. And what that means is organizations should strive to promote team spirit, unity, and morale. We all work together for one goal. Weber, on the other hand, gave us the standard bureaucratic picture. He believed less educated workers were best managed if supervisors gave them strict rules and regulations to follow and monitored their performance. So Max Weber kind of looked at lower level employees as very dull and in need of micromanagement. Weber supported job descriptions, written rules, decision guidelines, and detailed records, consistent procedures, regulations, and policies, and staffing and promotion based on qualification. When following Fayol and Weber, managers control the workers. This is something that you probably will recognize as ideas that are going by the wayside and have been for several decades. We're moving away from the idea that workers need to be controlled. We're giving them a bit more power, authority, responsibility. Hierarchy is a system in which one person is at the top of an organization and there is a ranked or sequential ordering from the top down. That's still in effect, but it's being modified slightly. Chain of command is the line of authority. So as the worker, I report to my manager reports to maybe a supervisor, the supervisor maybe reports to a VP. That's the chain of command. I don't go directly to the VP. I have to go to the person just above me. And here's your typical org chart. Here's the workers on the bottom. They report to their first line supervisors, who will report to department or functional managers, and those managers report to the president. So centralized versus decentralized. What is decentralized? What does that mean? It means that rather than decisions being made at the top and coming down, there's a more broad base for decision making. Maybe instead of coming from the corporate headquarters in New York, each region has a VP, and that VP can make decisions apart from what the president or the executive does in New York. Span of control has to do with how many people a manager is in charge of. There can be a broad span of control, meaning the one supervisor and a lot of workers. That works fine where the workers whose work tasks are predictable and standardized. In addition to assembly lines, think of other management situations that might benefit from a broad span of control. Now, as we said, what are the advantages? Well, reduced costs because you have less managers. Save on salaries. Broad span of control, faster decision making. There are fewer managers to make decisions. Disadvantages, fewer chances for advancement because there are fewer of those positions available to move up to. And it leads sometimes to overworked managers, something that we saw over COVID. There's loss of control, and you have less management expertise. Now, with a narrow span of control, meaning fewer workers, more managers, there's more control by top management because those managers report to their top management. There's more chances for advancement because there are more positions available. Downsides, higher cost because you have more higher paid managers. Delayed decision making, less responsiveness to customers. Here's a flat organizational structure. This is your perfect example of, say, your small business, right? A business on the boulevard, a candy store, ice cream shop. You got the workers and they all report to the owner of the company. On a different level, in a larger organization, you're going to have departmentalization. Typically, I was responsible for the accounting department, accounting and finance, which was separate from marketing and sales, which was separate from administration, which was separate from the technical departments. Departmentalization is traditionally done by function, just what I told you, where I worked. Groups workers according to skills, expertise, or resource use. So here are different ways to departmentalize. You can do it by product. Here we've got a marketing manager and we've got the different types of printed material that they're responsible for. Do it by function. Function is a big one. This is an organization of departments that happens in a large number of companies. You have the production. You have the marketing department. You have the finance department. Human resources, accounting. When I was a controller, typically I was these three for the companies I worked for. Here are some more examples. By customer group, by geographic location. In the United States, it could be East Coast, West Coast, or East Coast, Central, and West Coast. Could be by process, if it's a production, if it's a manufacturing company. There are different types of models for organizations. There are line organizations, no specialists who provide managerial support, and no departments. That's that flat model. There's line and staff. That's more typical of companies. Staff personnel advise and assist the line personnel who achieve the organizational goals. And then there's a matrix. I've worked in matrix-style organizations. It's sometimes challenging because in a matrix organization, you're reporting to more than one person. I had a job once where I reported not only to the CFO of the corporation who was in New York, but I also reported to the vice president of the West Coast in Los Angeles, in the office that I worked. So I had two bosses. It's challenging to meet the requirements of both of those people. There are advantages to Matrix. Matrix is flexible. Matrix sometimes leads to interorganizational cooperation, sometimes not. I didn't see that as happening. And Matrix will come up with creative solutions. Disadvantages, it's costly, it's complex, and a lot of people won't like it because it's complex. It makes life harder. Made my life harder reporting to two different people who had two different goals. Here's a matrix organization. So we have employees see the budget analyst, who reports not only to the VP of finance, but to a project manager as well. Teams are a big deal in any company, but teams must have a clear purpose. So why are we here? Why are we together? And what are we supposed to do? And that goes to number 2. What are our goals? And when we reach our goals, what happens to the team? Does the team disappear? Do we move to a different team? Create and maintain culture. Mutual accountability. This is something that organizations more and more are looking for. In other words, it helps when I'm thinking about how successful you are. and reverse. This is a cross-functional team right here in this operating room. We have a surgeon. We have, I don't know, the intern maybe. We have a nurse, and we have an anesthesiologist. So we have 4 different people here representing 4 different functions, and yet they're all working as one team. Benchmarking. Benchmarking is something I bring up with my financial accounting students a lot, because we talk about ratios. We talk about measuring the performance of a company. Well, you can't measure the performance of the company without having a benchmark, without having something that says, well, this is what my standard is. How do I compare to the standard? That's what we're doing here. Compares the organization's practices to some standard. It could be an industry standard. It could be a standard that company comes up on their own. Functions that aren't outsourced are a company's core competencies. This is something that companies focus on. What do we do best? Let's focus on what we do best and outsource everything else. What are the benefits of healthcare outsourcing? Well, you get staff to operate the facility and qualified staff, because these are people who are specialists in their areas. You get some cost savings as well. The downside, you don't have that team effort anymore because we have people from the outside. There's obviously the liability that somebody from the outside the organization screws up and you're responsible for it. And should the patients be informed that there are outsourced employees working on their case? Which jobs are most often outsourced? Manufacturing, big time. Big time, right? Again, information technology, not as much. Customer support. We've all had those calls to customer support that was actually in another country, right? Because it's cheaper to hire somebody from another country to answer all those customer questions. Change is something that organizations always have to fight with, because people, Americans, humans, humans are inherently averse to change. None of us like to change. Once we get accustomed to doing something a certain way, we don't want to do it a different way because we know we're comfortable with the way we do it. I had to fight that my entire career because every company I worked for said the same thing. We've been successful with what we've been doing for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Why should we change? Well, the reason to change is to get better. How do we create a change-oriented culture? Well, firms adapt best when their culture is already change-oriented, meaning that from the top, and we've talked about this for the whole semester already, change comes from the top. So the executive suite has to be open to making changes. The culture can be positive or negative, but they have to emphasize service to others, especially to customers. Because if you're focused on the customer, you're always trying to make improvements. And that forces you to adapt to change. And that's it for Chapter 7. So again, have a wonderful week. Please contact me if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to help. Read these again. Oh, seriously? What the hell? Okay.